In this video snippet, I'll be taking you through how to connect repository data into the UI of your app. I've launched Evoke and I've selected our new app. Before we go into page design, what I would like to do is show you a bit of homework that I've done in preparation for this video snippet. And that bit of work is to create a new entity called customer. So I chose the new entity option here. And within our customer, we've got a number of properties that I've created. We've got an address, the date that the customer opened their account with us, whether they're on hold, i.e. we can't sell them goods right now, and their name. In fact, there's a slightly more convenient way of showing all the properties. I'm just going to hide our menu to give us a bit more room, which displays them in the grid mode. So that's the entity that we're going to use in our bit of page design. I'll go into the page designer. There's our new page that we've been working on. I'm going to select that. If I go into layout mode, that's the layout that we'd produced in our last piece of work. I'll just keep it like that for the time being, just to remind us of the overall breakdown that we've got at the top level of our page. Okay, right, so in terms of connecting data into our application, what we're going to focus on in this particular video is the central portion here, which if we have a look at our running application, there we are, the central portion is going to show our selected list of customers. And we're also going to look at this bottom left section here, where we're showing some customer details. Right, so there's a couple of things I need to take you through here. The first thing is data sources. The best way to view data sources is to look at them and regard them as in-memory runtime objects that receive data from your database repository environment and then make that data available to bits of UI within the page. Now, data sources sit at the page series level. So the data sources that you create and which you will see on this page will be the same irrespective of which particular page you're working on. The advantage of having the data sources sat at the page series level is that it makes it really easy to share data across the series of pages that make up the page series as a whole. So what we're going to do here is to create our first data source, and this data source is going to hold the list of customers that's been selected from our repository. We'll look at how we actually perform that selection of customers in a later video, but for the time being, let's just create this data source which is going to hold our list of selected customers. I'm going to give it a name, call it customers. Each data source has got a base entity type. Of course, here it's going to be customer, and it's a collection, i.e. a list of customers. And I also want to tick this auto save option here, which means that as soon as the user makes any change within our customer list, it's going to trigger the appearance of these check save changes and cancel changes buttons in our top area. Let's save those details. So that's now defined our customers data source. What we now need to do is to define the shape and details of the data that's going to be displayed in the two separate regions of our page. And we do that by creating data templates. Like data sources, data templates also live at the page series level, and this makes it really easy to share and reuse these data templates across different pages within your page series. Just to remind us what we're going to do here, the first thing I'm going to do is to define the data template that describes this list of customers. So because it's going to be showing a list of customers, i.e. we've got multiple customers shown here, we're going to create a multiple entity template. I'm going to give it a list name, customers, customer list, that's what we'll call our template. And again, we're going to give it a base entity type. It's going to be customer. Once we've defined a base entity type, we're then able to select properties from that entity that describes which bits of information we'd like to show in the grid. And in this case, I'm going to show 2 or 3 bits of information. So it's going to be slightly different to the example that we've been looking at inside the browser. And because I'm going to choose multiple properties, I'm going to choose the add multiple, which is just a bit quicker than doing it one at a time. The thing to note here is that the sequence in which you check these options is going to, by default, be the column order within our grid. So I want to show the name first, then the date that they open the account, and then finally whether they're on hold or not. Click OK. That puts them there. You can then choose these one at a time and provide a bit more detail as to how you want to have this particular property rendered within the grid. So the first thing I'm going to do is to change the editor type to be label, which means that this is just going to be a display only column. We can define the percentage of space that's going to be allocated to this column. I'm going to make that 100%, because for these other columns I'm going to give them fixed sizes. Column header text, that's just been brought in from the entity definition. I'll leave that there, I'm happy with that. That's fixed. I'm going to make that 100 pixels, and it's again going to be a label display. And on hold, because on hold is defined as a Boolean value, if I just go back into the entity modeling, there we are, on hold is defined as Boolean. Because it's defined as a Boolean value, it defaults to a checkbox editor. In fact, again, I'm just going to have it as a non-editable display here, and I'm going to have that as a fixed width of 100. In the General Settings tab, I want to indicate that I want to show column headers, and that's all I'm going to do right now, apart from to choose this option, which means that when we select information into our customer's data source, it's going to immediately force the population of our grid here, but it's also going to select the first row, which will then result in other bits of information being shown, which we'll look at in a second. So that's the creation of our template. I'll just save that. Now that we've prepared that bit of, if you like, data UI, what we're going to do now is to plug that into one of the segments that we've defined within our page layout activity, and of course it's this central section here. The first thing we need to do is to say, well, this page segment isn't blank. What it does is to actually hold a list of entities. So I'm going to choose this multiple entities option. And now that we've chosen that, it displays this data content area here. And this is where we are going to define what data is to be plugged into this particular segment. And it's asking us to define 2 things. First of all, the data template that we want to use. Well, of course, we're going to choose our customer list that we've just created. And it's also asking for the name of the data source that's going to provide the data to be shown within that template. And I'm going to click our Builder button here, and I'm going to choose Customers. There we are. I can see that I probably want to give that date column a bit more room. A quick way of getting back to the data template of a segment is to right click it and then go to template definition, and I think I'll make that maybe 160. Yeah, that's got a bit more space there. So that's fine, I'm happy with that. The next segment that we want to set up in terms of data content is this guy down here. And what we want to show here are a few bits of information about the customer that is currently selected within this list. So the first thing we need to do is to create a data template to plug into this. And this is going to be a single entity template because this is going to show information about one particular customer. I'll create one here. I'll call it Customer Details. Again, the base entity type is customer. This is going to control the properties that we can choose. And again, I'm going to choose multiple properties here. I want to be able to edit the name. I want to edit the address, the date it was opened, and whether they're on hold or not. And again, the sequence of clicking controls the sequence of input fields. Now, if you do want to change the sequence of these input fields, you can use the nudge up and down to alter the sequence. I'll go through and check that the default editing details are correct. In fact, for the address, I'd like to make that a multi-line input, so I'm going to choose a text area. Because we've defined the date account opened as being a date property within our entity model, it's defaulted to using a date picker. I'm happy with that. And likewise, the is on hold is a Boolean value, so it's defaulted to using a checkbox, and I'm fine with that. Save the details. I'm going to go back into the UI design now, and we're going to plug in that template into this section here. So again, I'm going to change the content type. This time it's going to be a single entity. The option that you choose here controls the templates that are listed. So you notice it's not showing us the customer list there because it knows that this segment is interested in single entity displays. Therefore, it only shows the single entity templates. So I'll choose that. As soon as we choose it, we get a rendition of the data within that template. And this time around, our data source is going to be, well, it's going to be customers at the top level, but it's going to be the currently selected customer in particular that we want to show here. And this is an example of where you can string together a parent, child, even grandchild, great-grandchild relationship of data display within your UI. So as soon as the user clicks or taps on a row within this grid, the details of that selected row will be shown over in this bottom section here. So that's how to connect data from your repository into the UI of your overall page design. In the next video, we'll have a look at some finer aspects of page layout design, and we'll be looking at how to add titles and put a bit of space around the overall design content of our page.